Sagittarius, the one you let go still thinks about you. And the universe is testing you. Sagittarius, there are names you've erased from your contacts, but never from your memory. There are faces that, if someone accidentally mentions them, your heart still stirs. Not because you want to go back, but because something between you two was never fully named. You've lived through enough seasons of life to understand that some relationships must be released, even when your heart is still holding on. At this age, you no longer leave because you're angry, impulsive, or playing silent battles of pride. You leave because it has become time to choose your own peace instead of a love that constantly makes you question your worth. But even after you've moved on, busy with work, children, family, gatherings, new plans, there are still those tiny moments in the day, like when you're sitting in traffic, or waiting for water to boil for your tea, or curling into the darkness after a long day, when a quiet question rises like a sigh. I wonder, do they still think about me? You don't tell anyone because you're afraid they'll misunderstand. Think you're weak, clinging to the past. You've grown used to playing the roles of the strong one, the rational one, the one who knows better. You're the one who tells others, let it go. It's lighter that way. But when night falls, you yourself can feel an invisible thread tugging at you. A thread connecting you to a soul who has long stepped out of your life. Sometimes you sense them like a small wave brushing against your heart, a familiar song playing at the exact wrong or right moment, a scent drifting past you on the street, a dream whose clarity startles you awake. You wonder, is it me missing them? Or them missing me? Then you brush it aside, scolding yourself for being ridiculous, and return to your endless to-do list and responsibilities. But Sagittarius, some things are not ridiculous. Some connections don't end on the physical plane. They continue quietly in the field of energy. And sometimes, when you feel someone who is no longer in your life so vividly, it's not just your memory resurfacing. It's a sign their soul is brushing against your energetic field once again. It does not mean you were wrong to let go. It does not mean you need to return. It does not mean there is some dramatic, romantic, unfinished destiny between you. It might simply mean this: the universe is reopening an old page. Not for you to relive it, but to see how much you've changed since you left. How much have you grown since the day you walked away? Are you still willing to trade your peace to keep someone who never knew how to keep you? Do you still believe love means accepting pain? Or have you begun to understand that love is about healing together? In this journey, we will not simply answer the question, do they still think about you? Instead, we will go deeper. Why is their energy returning now? Why is your memory being activated right at the moment your life is shifting? And most importantly, what does the universe want to know from you? Will you repeat the old cycle or step through a new door? If as you listen your heart tightens a little, and also loosens a little, then perhaps this message is meant for you. Not to pull you back to the past, but to let you look at it one last time, with clear eyes, a brightened heart, and a soul that no longer accepts losing itself for anyone. When a memory no longer hurts you, but still makes you pause for a heartbeat. Sagittarius, there are things you thought you had left behind. You're busy with work, taking care of your children, caring for aging parents, keeping the household running, keeping yourself standing. You don't have time to think about the past. But then one day, while folding warm clothes fresh from the dryer, or stopping at a red light, that name, the one belonging to someone who once made you cry in silence, returns in a way you never consciously called for. It doesn't hurt, but it is not meaningless. I've met many Sagittarius women like you in my private sessions. Each walked in with a different story, yet all carried the same question. Sophia, why am I remembering them now? And why can't I fully let go? They didn't come because they wanted their ex back. They came because they were tired, because their minds were restless, because some part of them still held on to something long over, even though they didn't want to. I remember clearly the afternoon Sarah, a 51-year-old woman, stepped into my office. She sat down with eyes that weren't red, yet they carried a deep exhaustion. She had been married for more than 20 years, and her divorce wasn't dramatic. They simply drifted apart, slowly, like two continents separating over time. But 3 years after all the paperwork was done, just when her life had settled into rhythm, Sarah found the image of her ex-husband returning to her mind in a way that startled her. She told me that one evening, as she stood at the sink washing dishes, her hand suddenly stopped. Nothing special had happened, just the glass cup reflecting the kitchen light, Then suddenly she remembered the way he looked at her one evening 10 years ago. A small memory, seemingly harmless, yet her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was done with that chapter, Sophia," she said, her voice sliding down a sadness without sharp edges but with weight. "I don't want him back. But why does my heart still feel unsettled?" And then there was Amy, 47, a Sagittarius I will never forget. She once loved a man she believed was her soulmate, until he left without a single explanation. It took her more than a year to rebuild her life, to heal herself and finally feel okay again. But one morning while making coffee, her heart skipped a beat for no reason. She didn't understand why she thought of him after everything. "Am I being weak, Sophia?" Amy asked. "I thought I already moved on." No, they weren't being weak. And neither are you. There is something both Sarah and Amy didn't know when they first walked into my office, and something you may have never dared to consider. Sometimes a memory returns not because of your heart, but because their energy touches you first. When I said that to them, both women looked at me for a long time, as if someone had finally spoken aloud what they had sensed but never named. I asked Sarah, "Do you feel like something was left unsaid? Not to reconcile, but to end things in peace?" She stayed silent for a while, then nodded. I asked Amy, "Have you ever felt that he thinks about you? Not out of love, but out of regret?" She swallowed, her eyes softening for a moment. That was when both realized they were no longer standing where they once stood. Those memories no longer pierced them, but neither had they been fully laid to rest. Sagittarius, what you're feeling is not weakness. It's not foolishness. It's simply a sign that your heart has grown past the pain, but your mind still has one door left unclosed. Not because you want to hold on to them, but because you want to reclaim the part of yourself left behind in that story, the part you never allowed yourself to face. Sarah told me in a later session, "I realized I don't miss him. I miss the version of myself I was when I was with him, a version I had never fully forgiven." Amy realized something too. "I don't need him back. I just need to release the feeling that I wasn't enough when he left." When they understood that, the memories stopped haunting them, because the memories had completed their mission, to bring them back to close the door with clarity instead of stubbornness. And you are in that exact moment now. When your ex resurfaces in your mind, it is not to pull you back, but to show you how far you've come. The question is no longer, "Why do I remember them?" but rather, "What is this returning energy trying to tell me?" And to understand that, we must look deeper into why the universe allowed their frequency to touch yours at this particular time. Right when your heart is preparing for something entirely new. The next chapter will take you into that question. There, I will tell you what Sarah, Amy, and many Sagittarius women discovered when they looked directly at the return of their memories, not with a desire to love again, but with a desire to grow. Chapter 2, Reframing. Why is their energy returning now? And what does it actually mean? Sagittarius, the hardest part of growing up is not leaving someone. It's understanding why they still appear in your mind at certain turning points of your life. When a soul who once hurt you resurfaces through memories, energy, dreams, or a sudden strange emotion, it is almost never random. I have seen this pattern repeat itself with so many women I've worked with. They don't remember their ex during their weakest moments. Not when they are lonely. Not when they crave companionship. They remember them right at the moment they are about to step into a new chapter of life. Let me tell you about Linda, 54, a quintessential Sagittarius with a strong smile, so strong it sometimes hid the tiredness in her eyes. Linda divorced 4 years ago, and her current life was stable. She jogged in the mornings, had a solid career, 2 grown kids, and a close circle of supportive friends. One day, Linda was offered a promotion, a position she had dreamed of, one that validated her 20 years of effort. But in that exact week, her ex-husband began appearing in her mind with a frequency she could not understand. Not because she still loved him, not because she wanted him back, but because a small part of her was still asking, "Do I really deserve this new life?" Linda didn't realize that what unsettled her wasn't him. It was the old version of herself resurfacing, scared of taking a big step forward. When she told me, "Sophia, I don't understand why I'm thinking about him again," I looked at her gently and asked, "Are you afraid of good things?" She went silent. And that silence was the answer. The memory of an ex is sometimes the mind reopening a chapter you once wrote wrong. right before you begin a more important one. Then there was Jenna, 46. Jenna loved a man for 3 years, a man she thought she would grow old with, but he left her at the exact moment she needed him most, when her mother was hospitalized and she was carrying everything alone. It took Jenna a long time to heal, to believe in her strength again, and to trust that she deserved a different kind of love. Last year, Jenna met someone new, someone better, steadier, kinder. But just when everything began flowing smoothly, the old lover returned in her dreams. Jenna panicked. She thought it was a sign. She thought she wasn't over him. She felt like she was betraying her own emotions. But what was happening had nothing to do with that man. During one session, I told her, "It's not him coming back. It's your fear coming back. The fear that one day, this new man will abandon you the same way." Jenna cried, not because of the old pain, but because she finally realized it had never been about him. It had always been about the wound of abandonment she had never faced. And those wounds only resurface when you are about to step into a healthier love. Sagittarius, do you see it now? When an ex returns to your mind, there are usually 3 truths unfolding. 1. You're about to enter a new life chapter. And the mind always checks old cracks to see whether you've healed. 2. An old fear is rising to the surface. Not to hurt you, but to be seen and released. 3. You have grown enough to look at the past with clarity. The memory no longer drags you down. It illuminates you. You are no longer the person who once broke. You are the person who survived what broke you. That's why I always tell the women I work with, and now their energy isn't returning so you can love them again. It's returning to see whether you are still the old you. And when you feel the calmness in your heart, you begin to realize the real test was never about them. It was always about you. About whether you're ready for what's coming next, or whether you're still afraid you will repeat the mistakes of the past. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into this exact point. The true soul lesson that relationship left you, and why facing it directly will free you from the emotional loop that has held you for so long. That is where transformation begins. Chapter 3: Illumination. The lesson that relationship truly left for you. Sagittarius, every relationship that enters your life leaves a mark. Not a mark of them, but a mark of you during the time you loved them. An ex is not just someone you once walked beside. They are a mirror reflecting parts of yourself you may have forgotten, hidden, or never dared to fully face. And the moment they return to your mind, even when you no longer want them, is the moment the universe gently places that mirror in front of you again. Not to send you back, but to awaken you. Not long ago, I worked with Marlene, 49, a Sagittarius with a generous heart, always laughing, always giving, always being the support for others, to the point she forgot how to lean on anyone herself. When she talked about her past relationship, Marlene said, "Sophia, I don't understand why I accepted so many things that now don't feel true to who I am." She told me her ex wasn't a bad person, but he was emotionally younger than she was. He needed her to lead. He needed her to decide. He needed her to be strong for him. And Marlene, like many Sagittarians, did all of that beautifully, until she ran empty. "I thought that was love," she said with a sad smile. "But really, I was just trying to prove I was worthy enough to make someone stay." Then she looked at me and asked, "Why did I have to try so hard? Why didn't I see sooner that I was giving up too much of myself?" I told her something many people don't want to hear, but it is the core of liberation. Because you loved him with the part of yourself you had not yet healed.
Marlene went silent. She didn't cry, but I could feel something soften inside her, as if a long tightened knot finally loosened in the right place. Then there was Anna, 53, a successful businesswoman. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Financial stability, grown children, a beautiful home. But when she spoke about the man she loved 3 years ago, she stopped, as if an invisible thorn was still lodged beneath her skin. She said he never gave her a sense of safety. He would disappear for days with no explanation. He loved her, but not enough to walk beside her. He promised a lot, delivered little. Anna said, "Sophia, the thing that hurts me isn't that he left. It's that I accepted things that I would never tolerate now." And that was the lesson. It was never about that man. It was about the version of Anna who loved him. I told her, "You loved him from your own emptiness. Now that you are full, you would never love that way again. That is why he left, because the lesson was complete. Anna looked at me as if someone had finally turned on the lights in a room she had lived in too long. "I understand," she whispered. "It wasn't that I lacked anything. I simply grew beyond the version of love he required." Sagittarius, all these stories have something in common. The past relationship was not a lesson about love. It was a lesson about you. It showed you how you once loved from abundance or from lack, what you once endured, out of sincerity or out of fear, who you once became, radiant or shrunken to keep the peace, where you once stayed silent, and how that silence betrayed you of what you once believed love meant: effort, pain, proving yourself, and what you now know love truly is: walking together, not carrying alone. And you learned a truth both painful and freeing. Not everyone who hurt you was wrong. They were simply pointing you to the places you had not yet loved yourself enough. That is why their energy resurfaces now, because you are finally ready to look back, not to reconcile, but to release the version of yourself who stayed trapped there. You are no longer angry with them. You are no longer wounded by them. You simply have what Sarah, Amy, Linda, Marlene, and Anna once told me. I want to reclaim the part of myself I abandoned in that story. And once you see the lesson clearly, you realize something essential. You are no longer the person who once loved in ways that hurt you. You have become someone ready to love in ways that bring you peace. From here, Chapter 4 will guide you into a different energetic state, the state of activation. A place where you no longer talk about lessons, but truly prepare to meet someone more aligned, more mature, more willing to walk beside you. Because the old lesson has been seen. And when a lesson is complete, the universe always opens a new door. Chapter 4: Activation. The final test before the new door opens. Sagittarius, something very interesting happens when you truly learn the lesson from an old relationship. The universe will always send you one final test. Not to challenge you, but to confirm how much you have grown. This test does not always come in the form of your ex, but it always carries a familiar feeling, as if life is quietly asking you, are you still the version who once accepted less than what you deserve? I have watched this pattern unfold in many Sagittarius women I've guided. Let me tell you about Paula, 50, a woman so resilient that even she forgets how fragile she once was when she loved the wrong person. She had been in a relationship that made her shrink herself, not because he demanded it, but because she was so afraid of losing him that she no longer dared to express what she truly needed. When Paula finally left, it felt like she could breathe for the first time in years. She spent a year living alone, learning to love herself, learning not to need anyone, learning to stand without anchoring her identity in someone else's emotions. She believed the lesson was done, everything complete. But just when Paula began to feel ready to open her heart again, her ex, the man who once shattered her, sent a message. "I miss you." She came to see me, sat down, and let out a tired laugh. "Sophia, is this the universe messing with me? I've worked this hard to become strong. Why does he show up the moment I feel okay again?" I looked at Paula gently and said, "It's not that he appears when you're okay. You became okay, so he appears." She stopped laughing, and the tears fell before she could hold them back, because she understood profoundly that this test was never about him. It was about her. Do you see it, Sagittarius? The final test always arrives as a small, soft temptation, something just gentle enough to make you waver, not because you want them back, but because a part of you once longed for validation. It's the part of you that once wanted to hear, "I regret losing you. I value you. You were right. You were never not enough." And when those words appear, even from someone who no longer belongs in your future, there is a brief sense of relief. Not because you want them, but because you once wanted yourself to be seen. I once told Jenna, the same woman from the previous chapter, when an ex shows up right as you're about to step into something new, it's not a test of love. It's a test of self-respect. She went silent. Then she said a sentence I believe you will understand very deeply. I realized I no longer want someone to choose me. I want to be the one who chooses myself. Another Sagittarius woman, Diane, 55, told me that after years of healing from a painful relationship, she unexpectedly saw her ex at the supermarket. They were only a few steps apart. She could have smiled, said hello, exchanged a few polite words, maybe even revived a little warmth from the past. But instead, Diane simply nodded gently and walked away. "Why didn't I feel anything, Sophia?" she asked. I replied, "Because your heart closed that door without making a sound." Diane said that for the first time in years, she felt truly free. Sagittarius, this is what activation truly is. Not a new promise, not a new person, not a new opportunity, but a new you. A version of you who knows your worth without needing anyone to validate it. A version who no longer needs someone to play the role of the teacher. A version who doesn't chase emotional scarcity. A version who no longer tries to save or carry anyone. A version who understands that love is not sacrificing yourself for scraps of warmth.
And when you stand on that foundation, the foundation of real maturity, the universe begins to open what you have long been preparing for. But before that arrives, there is one very important question you must answer. Do you want to return to the version of yourself who once loved the wrong way, even just one more time? Your answer will determine which door opens next. And in the next chapter, we will talk about that door, the one the universe is preparing for the soul moving toward you. Someone who will not repeat your past, but who is aligned with the person you have become. Chapter 5 closing. When you realize the one who truly needs to be freed is yourself. Sagittarius, when you look back on this entire emotional journey, from the moment your ex resurfaced in your mind, to understanding why that energy returned, to recognizing the lessons the relationship left behind, you'll see a tender but powerful truth. What you needed was never an apology. What you needed was the return of yourself. That was the common thread among all the women I've worked with. Sarah did not need her ex-husband to come back. What she needed was the realization that she had spent too many years not placing herself in the position she deserved. When she understood that, she could finally breathe. Jenna did not need an explanation for why her ex disappeared. She needed to let go of the feeling that she wasn't enough, a feeling that had followed her like a shadow for far too long. When she saw the lesson, she became lighter. Paula did not need her ex's "I miss you" text. She needed to know she no longer wavered at the kind of love that once made her shrink. When she recognized her new reaction, she knew she had grown. Anna, the strong, accomplished woman who once carried deep wounds, did not need the past to come back and change. She needed herself to change. And she did. All of them shared the same realization. They were truly freed only when they understood that their growth journey was never about the ex. It was always about them. And the same is true for you, Sagittarius. You are the sign of freedom, of inner calling, of seeing beyond the limits other people unconsciously place around themselves. But few people know that Sagittarius has another side. You often love with a kind of moral integrity of the heart. You love someone by seeing their best potential, even when they aren't yet that person. You give more than you should. You believe in possibilities, not realities. You hope for the future, even when the present gives you no reason to hope. Your gift is faith. And sometimes that faith hurts you. But the years have taught you something. Love is not seeing someone through the light of your hopes. It is when they see you through the light of their truth. Your ex could not do that. But you have learned to do that for yourself. And that is why their energy can return now without being able to touch you anymore. You have moved further than them. Further than the memory. Further than the fear. Further than the version of love that once exhausted you. And now, as you stand at the crossing of past and future, there is something important I want you to remember. It is not the past returning. It is you returning to yourself, and the past simply came to say goodbye. A new door is opening, not because someone new is coming, but because you are ready to receive. What is coming toward you is not a lesson. It is the reward for having completed the lesson. And if you feel your heart warming, not because of old memories, but because of clarity, know that your soul has traveled far enough to meet the person who is meant for the version of you that exists now. Before we end, I want to say something. Something I say in every session when a client sits in front of me, eyes shining and trembling after seeing their own truth. You're not alone. Your story may be the anchor for someone lost in the same pain you once lived. And because every video on this channel is created from the real stories of those who have sat in my office, I want to hear your story too. If you feel safe, share in the comments. What made you think of your ex recently? What are you still holding on to that your heart wants to release? And who do you hope to become in the coming phase of your life? I read every comment. I feel every story. And your words will inspire the next videos, so I can speak directly to what your soul is asking for. Sagittarius, you are not going back to the past. You are simply stepping into the future with a brighter heart. And I would be honored to walk with you on that journey.